I can't complain compared to what you got.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah, it's been a rough week, but not. I would feel bad telling you about like being upset.
Honestly, I'll take any distraction I can get right now.
Yep. I've just been tired, man. Been busy at work. That's about it.
I gotcha.
Yeah, I have not been really busy at work, but I've just been tired between kids and the house and driving to. I still have to drive to work, but which is not fun driving through Atlanta or around Atlanta.
So do you work like in Atlanta or?
So right now I work just outside of Atlanta. It's in Union City. So it's like just southwest of Atlanta. I mean, it's really close, but it's not quite in. It's still its own place. But I have to take 285, like is the bypass around Atlanta. I have to take that every day. So the mornings is like an hour. The afternoons is like an hour and a half.
Man, yeah,
so
road is rough. I remember.
Yeah. The Atlanta traffic is the worst traffic I've ever been in. So, although I've heard Nashville's pretty awful as well.
Yeah.
Dude, Chattanooga was bad. When I went up to go visit them, Chattanooga was worse than Atlanta.
Oh, was it Chattanooga?
Yeah.
Chattanooga is bad. Nashville, James, you didn't really get to see Nashville on a bad day, but
no, I did not.
Yeah, we zipped right into town that day, but usually, like, it sometimes takes. It could take an hour and a half to get into town some days, just from our place. It took like 30 minutes when you were there, but
yeah. Yo, did you hear about all the drama and stuff going on over at the Daily Wire?
No, what's the drama?
With Brett Cooper leaving and all that?
I did not hear about that.
Yeah, they were probably a good thing you didn't get a job there. from all the gossip coming from there, at least.
Now I'm curious. What's
I won't go too much into it because I really don't know too much, but like Brett Cooper made a video saying she was leaving the Daily Wire, like her contract expired and she didn't renew it. She was going to go make her own channel. And they replaced her with her best friend, who is like, I guess, her maid of honor in her wedding.
Oh, dude.
Yeah, which was also the producer on the show. But apparently she was supposed to go with her. And like, so the two of them would start their own show. And she was like, nope, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to stay with the Daily Wire and have them pay me, be the new star.
Backstabber.
Yeah. So like, I guess they lost a bunch of views. And then the owner of the company, Jeremy something, made like a video kind of apparently lying about some stuff about Brett and the whole situation that she got replaced with. And then Brett is also under NDA right now about like talking about the Daily Wire, so she can't talk about anything. And but on her last episode, the comment, like the show is literally called the comment sections, right? All the comments were saying, if you're under NDA and can't speak fully about like the Daily Wire, wear, I think blue, I think is what it was. And she wore blue that day.
Ooh.
Yeah. And she just came out with her new channel and she hasn't been able to say anything about the Daily Wire yet. So
interesting.
There's a lot of sketchy stuff.
Too much drama, man. That stuff is stupid.
Daily Wire was supposed to be the good one, man, as far as news companies go. But
why'd leave though? That's another thing though. It's like if someone just leaves a good job like that, like there might be a reason for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Something's fishy.
Well, I'm ready to get started if you guys are.
Yeah, I don't know where Travis is, so.
Yeah, he said he'd be a little late, but I'm sorry, I can't wait any longer. It's already 8:30 and I don't want to be up too late.
Yeah. You want to take it away?
Yeah, I'll read. You ready, Vance?
Yeah, just so you guys know, I might have to pack up and leave at some point to head back to the hospital, but I will keep this on in the car while I'm doing that. So,
No problem.
Okay, yeah, that's fine.
cool. All right, I'm ready if y'all are.
All right, we're on Matthew 21, the Triumphal Entry.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when they drew near to Jerusalem and came to Bethphage, to the Mount of
Bethphage?
Olives, huh?
Bethphage? I don't know.
Bethphage? Oh, that's maybe I can't say that.
Doesn't sound right.
To the Mount of Olives, then Jesus sent his 2 disciples, saying to them, "Go into the village in front of you, and immediately you will find a donkey tied and a colt with her. Untie them and bring them to me. If anyone says anything to you, you shall say, 'The Lord needs them,' and he will send them at once." This took place to fulfill what was spoken by the prophet, saying, "Say to the daughter of Zion, behold, your king is coming to you, humble and mounted on a donkey, on a colt, the foal of a beast of burden." The disciples went and did as Jesus had directed them. They brought the donkey and the colt and put them on their cloaks and put them on. Yeah, okay. I'm like,
Put on them.
yes. They brought. It's the way this stuff is worded, man. It trips me up.
Weird. Yeah.
They brought the donkey and the colt and put on them their cloaks, and he sat on them. Most of the crowd spread their cloaks on the road, and others cut branches from the trees and spread them on the road. And the crowds that went before him and that followed him were shouting, "Hosanna to the Son of David! Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. Hosanna in the highest." And when he entered Jerusalem, the whole city was stirred up, saying, "Who is this?" And the crowd said, "This is the prophet Jesus from Nazareth of Galilee." Jesus cleanses the temple. And Jesus entered the temple and drove out all who sold and bought in the temple. And he overturned the tables of the money changers and the seats of those who sold pigeons. He said to them, "It is written, 'My house shall be called a house of prayer,' but you make it a den of robbers." And the blind and the lame came to him in the temple, and he healed them. But when the chief priests and the scribes saw the wonderful things that he did, and the children crying out in the temple, "Hosanna to the Son of David," they were indignant, and they said to him, "Do you hear what these are saying?" And Jesus said to them, "Yes, have you never read? Out of the mouth of infants and nursing babies, you have prepared praise?" And leaving them, he went out of the city to Bethany and lodged there. Jesus curses the fig tree. In the morning, as he was returning to the city, he became hungry, and seeing a fig tree by the wayside, he went to it and found nothing on it, but only leaves. And he said to it, "May no fruit ever come from you again." And the fig tree withered at once. When the disciples saw it, they marveled, saying, "How did the fig tree wither at once?" And Jesus answered them, "Truly I say to you, if you have faith and do not doubt, you will not only do what has been done to the fig tree, but even if you say to this mountain, 'Be taken up and thrown into the sea,' it will happen. And whatever you ask in prayer, you will receive, if you have faith." The authority of Jesus challenged. And when he entered the temple, the chief priests and the elders of the people came up to him as he was teaching and said, "By what authority are you doing these things? And who gave you this authority?" Jesus answered them, I also will ask you one question, and if you tell me the answer, then I will tell you by what authority I do these things. The baptism of John, from where did it come? From heaven or from man?" And they discussed it among themselves, saying, "If we say from heaven, he will say to us, 'Why then did you not believe him?' But if we say from man, we are afraid of the crowd, for they hold for they all hold that John was a prophet." So they answered Jesus, "We do not know." And he said to them, "Neither will I tell you by what authority I do these things."
Sassy Jesus strikes again.
Dumped.
The parable of the two sons. What do you think? A man had two sons, and he went to the first and said, "Son, go and work in the vineyard today." And he answered, "I will not." But afterward he changed his mind and went. And he went to the other son and said the same. And he answered, "I go, sir," but did not go. Which of the two did the will of his father? They said, "The first." Jesus said to them, "Truly I say to you, the tax collectors and the prostitutes go into the kingdom of God before you. For John came to you in the way of righteousness, and you did not believe him. But the tax collectors and the prostitutes believed him. And even when you saw it, you did not afterward change your minds and believe him." The parable of the tenants. Hear another parable. There was a master of a house who planted a vineyard and put a fence around it and dug a winepress in it and built a tower and leased it to tenants and went into another country. When the season for fruit drew near, he sent his servants to the tenants to get his fruit. And the tenants took his servants and beat one, killed another, and stoned another. Again, he sent other servants, more than the first, and they did the same to them. Finally, he sent his son to them, saying, "They will respect my son." But when the tenants saw the son, they said to themselves, "This is the heir. Come, let us kill him and have his inheritance." And they took him and threw him out of the vineyard and killed him. When therefore the owner of the vineyard comes, what will he do to those tenants? They said to him, "He will put those wretches to a miserable death and let out the vineyard to other tenants, who will give him the fruits of their seasons." Jesus said to them, "Have you never read in the scriptures? The stone that the builders rejected has become the cornerstone. This was the Lord's doing, and it is marvelous in our eyes. Therefore, I tell you, the kingdom of God will be taken away from you and given to a people producing its fruits. And the one who falls on this stone will be broken to pieces. And when it falls on anyone, it will crush him." When the chief priests and the Pharisees heard his parables, they perceived that he was speaking about them. And although they were seeking to arrest him, they feared the crowds because they held him to be a prophet.
These dang Pharisees, man.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah.
I got a couple things I want to touch base on.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was quite a bit of reading you did there.
Yeah, it was a lot.
Jesus cursing the fig tree. So, says, and Jesus answered them, "Truly I say to you, if you have faith and do not doubt, you will not only do what has been done to the fig tree, but even if you say to this mountain, be taken up and thrown into the sea, it will happen. And whatever you ask in prayer, you will receive, if you have faith." Just driving home this idea yet again that he's been driving through all through Matthew, how important faith is.
Yep.
And that if we have faith, God will give it to us.
Yep.
It's just reaffirming that.
Oh, look, Travis is here.
What up?
What
dude?
up, boys?
What's up, Travis?
Sorry, I'm a little
What's
late.
up?
How we doing?
Good.
All good.
What up, Vance? Good to see you, bro.
You too.
How are you doing?
I'm doing great, man. Thank you. Just
Good.
a little late because whenever I got in, Devin and I were munching on some food and talking for a bit. He got me into this show. Started watching an episode of it, but we ended up pausing it and talking about it. And then his baby girl FaceTimed him to say goodnight, and I realized it was like 8:30, so I'm like, oh, I gotta hop on.
Oh,
Figured
yeah.
it was a good time too.
Yeah.
Hmm,
How are y'all?
Good.
pretty good.
Yeah.
Good.
We've been on for a little while now, so
So please,
Yeah, we had to get started. We didn't want to wait till it got too late.
yep.
for sure.
We just finished reading through Matthew 21, so we were just about to go start reviewing it.
Nice.
Okay,
What do we think so far?
We just covered the Jesus curses the fig tree, which he's just like saying like you need to have faith, essentially, like just driving that point home like he's done so many times already. But there's a reason he does it so many times. It's really important, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I caught that very end of it. Whatever you ask in prayer, you will receive if you have faith.
Yeah.
So I didn't get the context of the conversation, but I did just jump right in. You know, if he says it all the time, really drives it home. It seems like having that faith and the unwavering so is kind of the key to everything.
Yeah.
It's like that's the cheat code.
Yeah.
I think an important takeaway from this chapter is you get to kind of see a different side of Jesus than might think of. A lot of times you just sanitized version of Jesus where he's just all peace and love and everything, but it's like here he's like flipping tables over in the temple, and he just killed a fig tree for an example. Like it's like making something grow. He just curses the fig tree and it dies. Like it's kind of interesting to see a different side of him where he's like, no, there's some power here. And it's kind of a dichotomy too, because he rides in on a donkey in the beginning of the paragraph, which is the chapter, which is a sign like peace and humility. A horse back in that.
Oh, you're cracking up there a little bit.
Oh, I was going to say, I think the custom of the time is rode in on a horse, you might be riding into like conquer. But if you made your entrance on a donkey, it's kind of just a humble entrance.
Yeah, for sure.
But then
Yeah.
he rides in on a donkey and like starts flipping tables and stuff. So like a bit of a contrast to it.
Hey, Travis, do you have your TV on in the background? No, do you have one on, Vance?
No.
I'm getting background noise from something.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're getting background, Devin. I can mute myself. I can mute myself until I have something to chime in on, so it can dull.
Are
the
you
noise.
able to put on that function for the background noises?
Noise gate.
Yeah, it's a
Oh
noise
yeah,
gate.
it won't let me edit his mic settings. That's weird. Oh wait, there it goes.
I had it muted. Is that better? I just put it on.
Yeah, that's better, I think.
No,
He's so loud. I can hear him so
There-
clearly.
hold on.
Stop messing with it, bro. I'm doing it.
No, it's leave it check marked.
I was trying to leave a check for it. You kept turning it off, bro.
No,
Heck,
see, on
Travis.
my screen it showed me you turning it off. I'm like, what the heck is happening?
Well, because it kept doing this and that. I'm trying to click it.
See, I think
Get
that
off
helped.
me.
It helped a
helps.
bit.
It definitely helps. Yeah.
Yeah, here. I'll just go on mute until I have.
Why doesn't
Yep.
Devin want to join us?
Hey man, not everyone wants to join into these things. You know what I mean?
No, I know.
Well, it's very nice having our two guests here.
Do you want to join us? Do you want to have Bible study with us after you're off the phone with after you're on the phone with your daughter?
That was a wonderful face, Vance.
He'll come and say hi.
Okay.
By the way,
I'm good,
Vance,
bro.
if you put some headphones in, I think we'll be able to hear you a little bit better as well, because they don't connect to the microphone headphone or the headphone microphones.
Who, me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I might do that in a bit.
All right, cool. Anywho, I agree, Vance, with what you're saying about like seeing this dichotomy of like how Jesus is too. And actually, I did want to bring that up because when he answered the Pharisees about the question that they wouldn't answer for him, he answered, so they answered Jesus, "We do not know." And he said to them, "Neither will I tell you by what authority I do these things." I made that remark about like the sassy Jesus strikes again.
Yeah.
But it's also kind of fascinating because at this point, Jesus is fulfilling Old Testament law, right? So he's kind of held to that standard, and the eye for an eye is that Old Testament law, you know? So he's following the law right there, like the Old Testament written law, by answering in that form, which is fascinating because he's being snarky, but it's also like he's treating them like they're treating him.
Yeah, that's true.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But then,
Go ahead.
But yeah, right after that, I mean, then he goes on to teach to his disciples, you know, I'm creating something new. You know what I mean? So he's coming to fulfill the law and then start a new one, a different way of life.
Yeah, I was going to say the reason I think it jumped out to me when we read it just now that there's so much contrast in his actions is because that's kind of his style when he speaks. A lot of the stories are a little confusing at first and really make you think, and you're like, well, he just said this, so what does that mean? You know, but and I kind of see that in the actions too, in a way, because it's like you said, I come to bring not peace but a sword or whatever, but talks about peace a lot too, so it's kind of it really makes you think.
Right. Well, because he is bringing peace ultimately, right?
Yeah.
But then he says straight up, like, I've come to like pit mother against daughter, son against father, you know, like separating families. But that's ultimately what's happening with his coming, is it is creating a sort of divide, but that divide is peace.
Yeah, and him just wrecking all the money changers tables and stuff. It's like that's Jesus actually being violent. Like I forget what book says it, but like I believe it says too. Like he just went in there with a whip and like cracking it over people and stuff. It's just like not a story a lot of people hear about, but kind of interesting.
Yeah, because they're like, he's actually getting, it seems like he's getting mad because they're like defiling his father's house, essentially.
Yeah.
Yep.
You know, I mean,
and we know God has wrath too from the Old Testament.
Right.
That's why it's when you hear people say there's nothing to be upset about or stuff like that, that's a good example of like, no, there's things that are not acceptable, you know, and even Jesus went and just destroyed it. So it's kind of that passage always stuck with me. So
yeah.
And it is fascinating too what he's deeming as unacceptable as well, because it seems like the things that he really is deeming unacceptable most of the time is because you're not treating God like God. And you're dishonoring him because you're acting in your own way. So it's like the money changers, they're selling that in the temple, in the church area, essentially. It's like God's like, no. That's things for man, not for me. You know?
Yep.
Yeah.
Because I hopped in after you guys read that chapter, but I do remember very clearly from like pre-K the lesson of like the time that that Jesus came and flipped the tables. Like I even remember like a little cartoon that we watched that had it. And from what I remember, so I'm gonna ask you guys to correct me if I'm wrong, but it was because like the money thing that they were doing was basically saying, hey, you give us this more money, you'll get in a better spot in heaven or something like that. That's why they were doing it at the church, trying to bribe the people into buying their way in. And that's why he was just like, absolutely not. Right.
Yeah, it was buying forgiveness for their sins. Yeah.
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 What the money change were doing? I never heard that.
Yeah, that was a big thing that was going on. Also, I think there was like things being sold in the temple as well. Like they were selling like products in there. So it was becoming more like a market than it was a temple.
Yeah.
I think that says something too, because like you guys have been hitting with how Jesus is always kind of like a guy that speaks in riddles and does these great things. And he preaches all this stuff about loving, being kind and everything. It's interesting to imagine like what they would have thought, like seeing that for the first time and like seeing like just how much potential he has for being like just as wrathful and rageful. It's just even worse because he's got these extra gifts, you know? So it's just like what I can imagine being confused about like, wait, weren't you saying for so long about like staying your hand, not being violent, this and that? And eventually like just I don't know, you know, you can imagine like it'd be weird for them to see. And the fact that it is this stuff, like that real line crossing that makes him get to that point, definitely makes you kind of wonder to what you're saying, Vance. You know, it shows that you don't have to just be peace and love all the time, that there is righteous anger and whatnot. It's interesting with how easy it is to get angry in the world today. Where's that line, you know?
Right.
I think it's a good example of idolatry too, which God is like, especially in the Old Testament, that's like strictly punished, you know? So like what better example of idolizing money is there than to set up your business in a temple of God, you know? So it seems like a really big insult, you know?
Yeah.
Kind of
Yeah,
makes
that's a really good point.
You can call that transactional faith.
Yeah, it makes you wonder with these churches these days where it's like the pastors making a crap load of money from it. It's like that, you know, that's what that is pretty much. Selling all these books and everything.
It's
like,
the righteous gemstones in real life.
Yeah, it's like still going on now in a way.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, having the Pharisees and Sadducees in here is like a true testament to like what we still have today. Like, I mean, there's a reason Jesus is saying all of this. The Bible's a generational book. It's, you know, it's not just for when he was there, you know what I mean? It applies to us today too.
Yeah. I mean, I've always said that if Jesus came back today, the Pharisees and the scribes and all that would most likely be the heads of like the current churches at the time.
Oh yeah.
Probably a lot.
What was that, Vance?
Yeah, like probably a lot of them.
Yeah.
Like especially the ones like I saw a video of this one guy, Kenneth Copeland. I don't know if you ever heard of him.
Yeah.
Giving some sermon on how he owns like 37 Breitling watches, and because he was such a good Christian, someone just handed 38th one, and everyone's like cheering. Like,
The prosperity gospel right there.
yeah, like that would be. That's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw one of those mega churches, like a video from like inside, and it was like they had this giant stage and like 7 players in the band, real big extravagant thing. And then the caption was like, now when does church ever need this? And like by the time I finished reading it, in the back there were pyrotechnics and this person on wires in a white dress comes flying through singing. Meanwhile, you see them passing the donations bucket around the pews. It's just like,
yeah,
that's
dude,
like
it's
some
ridiculous.
transformation church stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely extreme. Yeah. It's crazy, dude.
I feel like there's some
Yeah.
churches where I feel like there's a difference between like the prosperity gospel churches where the pastor has like a giant mansion, and like there are just some big churches that do extravagant stuff like that. But I agree, even that, is that really helping anything? Like, why are you spending all that money on having flying through the audience? Like,
Yeah, because that's just getting back enticed by the earthly treasures,
Yeah. That's a good point.
Yeah, it's definitely walking that line without a doubt. I think that's why it's so like up for like conflict, I guess, in the church right now, because it is walking that line. Because you also have the argument of like, oh, it's a celebration of like what Jesus did for us. We should celebrate that,
Yeah, but at what point,
what cost?
like church, while church is supposed to be like a good place to go for community and to worship, at what point is it like an entertainment center?
Right.
And it's for
You know
you
what I mean?
more so
Like,
than it is about.
Exactly. Yeah.
like I didn't come here to watch a performance. I came here to learn about Jesus.
Now, hey, if
Or God.
the worship band be hitting it, hey, you know what? Praise to them.
No, the band, dude, is great. But like, if that's my thing though, if the church service is 90% the band, that's not the point of church though. It's like, yeah, you're there to worship. Don't get me wrong, but I'm also there to learn, right?
Mhm.
Like I want to
And
hear
have
some
community as
stuff
well.
from, huh?
And have community as well.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, because like the church I go to, they sing some different songs probably for like the first 15, 20 minutes, which is great.
Yeah.
Warms
After
you
that,
up.
he goes over and he talks about like they usually go over and do like 20 different verses from the New Testament stuff. They
Oh, that's
pull a
real
lot
good.
of verses, which is awesome. And then they tell stories in like relation to those verses, like either examples or learning experiences or whatever. So like that's kind of like what I think church is supposed to be about.
There's a level of humility that you got to have with it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You know, we're
100%.
That's the right word, I think, Travis.
Yeah.
because
For
like
sure.
that. It's funny you mentioned Kenneth Copeland because I saw this video of him getting asked on the street about all of his private jets that he had. Apparently, he's got like a lot of private jets, and his mega church was like at this time getting a little bit of flack for like the level of donations I guess they were asking for. And the lady was trying to say something about like how do you kind of justify all the wealth and this and that, and she's just asking him kind of like what's the move here, and he got like this like change in his face,
Yeah.
and the way he was calling her a demon or this and that for questioning him,
Yeah.
and it looked like he was the guy straight up possessed. And
I've seen
I
a
think
few videos where he looks possessed. Yeah.
That's the video.
and
Like, he made that plane so cheap for me. I just had to buy it.
or the one where he was like casting out COVID-19 on stage, and someone put a guitar track over it and
That one,
made
yeah.
it seem like it was like a heavy metal thing. It was really funny, but on a
There's one
serious
where he
note,
just is talking, then he just stops and just starts talking in tongues. Like he's like talking normally like this, and then he just Skama da babum duba. Skama da baya da babum.
it's all. But
And everyone's
on a
like,
serious,
yeah.
like on a serious note, like I think the way that I guess I justify like what happens to these kinds of people and everything is that I don't think in I guess an ideal world they wouldn't get to the position of that authority in their church if it wasn't for they earned it in the first place. And I think especially because these guys are all so old, they've spent so much time working on this to where it was all about being a good person, and they cared so much about being a good person and following the faith that over time in their brain there's no way they could ever be the kind of person that wouldn't be good because it matters so much to them. So therefore they excuse themselves from holding themselves accountable, and they get lost in the business side of things, and well, maybe it starts as sacrificing a moral to save the church from going bankrupt. So they do a shady deal to get a little bit of extra money, but then the money just touches their heart and blackens the skin. And I think they
Shouldn't have
just
to do
get
a show in the first place, though, if you're following Jesus.
sure
Yeah,
you shouldn't,
God will
but
provide.
I think that's the way that they get caught, though. It starts off as such a noble crusade, and I think they just don't have their hearts properly opened up enough, and that's what gets
Oh
them
yeah.
so. Because you'd think that if they're priests and whatnot, the spiritual warfare, they're kind of a higher target, than the.
I don't know if it's their hearts are opened up enough. I think that is the problem. Their hearts are too open.
Well, okay,
everything
Yeah.
else.
even better, I think, to get my point across, that like it starts off that way, but like what I've been learning is lately is how quiet real evil is, and how deceptive it really is, and it always, like, the road to hell is paved with good intentions,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't know, it's just it's the fact that it is so easy to stray from the path, that's the way that I want, that only way I can justify it in my heart to understand, because I don't know, I would love to take these kinds of mega churches and like sort of wake them up and be like, yo, like, look how many
Yeah, do
people
you
you can
guys realize
house.
what
And
you're doing is whack, right? Like,
yeah, because
you guys clearly don't see the issue here. Like,
There,
that's what
there
blows my
are
mind.
some very good mega churches out there, though, because I don't know, we're getting into a territory that like is kind of trashing on mega churches, and I don't want to go there. I really don't.
that's fair.
Because there is a lot of good Christians in those organizations, and there's people who were truly do right. And if God is gonna change that, He's gonna change that. You know what I mean? So I just don't want to get too much into ranting about this kind of stuff, because we've been talking about
Yeah.
it now for a while.
Sure, we can move
yes,
on.
it is very easy to get into that slope. It's like that verse that we read last week about the camel going through the eye of a needle. Being the rich
Yeah.
man. That's, and this is exactly what is happening in mega churches, is people are getting wealthy, and it's very hard when people are wealthy.
Yeah, he never
Money
said it was
is-
impossible, but he did say it was difficult.
Yeah.
Money is quite the temptress. Like, everyone says they hold morals over money, but you put 3 million in front of them when they're struggling for rent, you learn about a lot about a person,
Yeah. Well, and I like that you said, the path to hell is paved on good intentions, because people don't realize that, like, what they think is good, you have to be careful on what you think is good versus what God thinks is good. Right? That's the understanding that you have to have. Everything that we think is good, God doesn't necessarily think is good, right?
Because I don't even think it's it's good. God knows it's good.
Right.
That's why it is the law. That's why it is what Jesus preaches,
Yeah.
And I think it's an interesting thing that we were talking about, how me and you were talking about it, Bryce, on the phone the other day, about how I think Jesus and God kind of understood the idea that society changes shape. How, like, whenever all of this happened and he set these rules and the Bible was written, society was very, very different than 2025 with technology and everything. And I think it's not so much that you learn to bend the rules with faith, but I think that there's decisions that we as Christian men in 2025, in order to survive while still holding true to these teachings, I think there's decisions we have to make, and knowing where to, like we were talking about, it starts off, it's paved with good intentions. Like, you do something that you think is good for you because it might be important for you in the long run, or like you need to have the experience of having fun, or like you need this break or something like that. And it starts off as simple as that, and then before you know it, you could be just in a point of no return.
Mm-hmm.
I guess why the faith thing is just always the most important.
Yeah.
Hi, Devin. Hello. Devin wants to say hi.
Hey, what's up, buddy?
What up, dude? He
Oh,
can't hear us, can he?
Oh, Yeah, he
Yeah.
can't hear us.
And now they're muted. So.
What? Oh, you can. New roommates. They were roommates.
We're roommates. Well, we can't hear them, so
Yeah. All right. Well, I think it's a good point to move on.
yeah, because I know we talked about that one verse for a while. So
Yeah.
I also wanted to touch on the parable of the two sons as well.
Okay.
So it says, "What do you think? A man had two sons, and he went to the first and said to the son, 'Go in and work the vineyard today.' And he answered, 'I will not.' But afterward changed his mind and went. The other son went and said the same. And he answered, 'I will go, sir,' but did not go. Which of these two did the will of his father?" And they said the first. So the guy who did the will of his father was the one that was like, "Nope, I'm not gonna do it," and then went and did it. Versus the kid who was like, "I'll go do it," and then didn't. Right. And that's very important walking in faith, because if you hear something from God, a lot of times you're like, "No, I'm not going to do that." Straight up. It's very difficult to listen to that. It's like Jonah. He was told to go to Nineveh, and Jonah was like, "Nope, not going to do it." But then he did it. And that's ultimately what God wants it for us.
Yeah.
So I think about that verse quite a bit, especially when I get a word that I don't like, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's also a good lesson, because if you think about it in your own life, like, do you feel more confident dealing with someone who tells you yes and then flakes out on you? Or do you feel better about someone who will tell you no, but when they say yes, they actually mean it? Or they say no and then they actually help you out, you know?
Right.
Like,
Yeah. Yeah. It shows your true character, right? And like
Right.
what he's saying here, I think was like a direct kind of like he's throwing some shade at the Pharisees too, because it kind of goes back to what he said in the previous chapter, which was like, you praise me with your lips, but your heart is far from me, or something like that. So, you know, it's like, you know, the second son is like, "Yeah, father, I'll do that." Like he's like, you know, being the good son, but ultimately is not, right?
Right. You got to work it like that. You gotta fire him.
You got to what?
You got to fire him.
Yeah.
Then you're just lying at that point. You know, it's like, dude,
Right.
you didn't do what I asked, and you said that you would.
Yeah,
You said that you did.
exactly.
it's like
Yeah.
that Pharisees are doing.
Yep.
They answered the first one like they knew that. But that kind of confused me at first, but then I was like, oh, he's just saying, like, yeah, they're going to say the right answer, but they're not living it.
Right. Also, I love the fact that it says here, the stone that the builders rejected has become the cornerstone, and the whole time that was like referring to Jesus.
Oh yeah. Which verse was that?
42.
Oh, okay. $42.
Yep.
Oh. Yeah, I really like that.
And that's also that verse is essentially talking about kind of what Vance was hitting on the nose earlier about, like, this more wrathful type Jesus, this more hardcore, like, it's not all just sunshine and roses, you know, because right before that, they said to him, "He will put those wretches to a miserable death and let out the vineyard to other tenants who will give him the fruits in their seasons." You know, not the people who killed all the messengers, you know. So it's God being like, "Hey, if you don't, like, I'm giving all this stuff to you, and if you reject me and I send messengers to you time and time again, you're going to go to death, dude. Like, there's no way around it. You're rejecting me."
Yep.
And then put it in the context of what they would do in his situation, in God's situation. They're like, oh yeah, no, you kill those people.
Yeah, right. I mean, at that point, he's kind of justified because they've basically hardened their hearts against him, right? I mean,
Absolutely.
they chose to do what they wanted to do.
Yeah. I mean, they killed the guy's own son.
Yeah,
The owner of the land.
Yeah.
God
right.
and Jesus. The
Yep.
perfect example.
Yeah, it is.
One thing I thought about with this read through also is with that story specifically, if you have someone who's guilty of something and you ask, like, oh, what should happen to this person? If they're guilty, it's like they might say, oh, well, we should maybe take it easy on them. But it's like the Pharisees kind of have the gall to say, oh, yeah, no, that person should be put to death. But they don't really talk about themselves. You know, that's why it's kind of Jesus snaps at them every time, I think.
Mhm.
Oh, yeah.
Say something. He's like, hello, that's you, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like too how it says when the chief priests and the Pharisees heard this parable, they perceived that he was speaking about them.
Yeah.
And although they were seeking to arrest him, they feared the crowds because they held him to be a prophet. It's like, how more cowardice could you make them in that moment?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's just like total cowardice. They're just trying to get out of it. And they also just don't see themselves as the problem.
Yeah. They're just so afraid of losing what they
have. Yeah, they carry their treasures on earth.
Yeah.
So they, they're already messing up right there.
True.
Would you guys like to move on? 22?
Yeah, I'm ready.
All right, cool. I will read this one.
Hey, guys, I think I'm going to go ahead and head out. Allison kind of needs me there, and I feel like I won't be able to focus much in the car, but it's been fun to join you. I'll definitely be on these in the future.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
Do you
that'd
want
be
us to just
great.
put you backstage? You can just listen.
Sure. Yeah, we could do that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cool, man. I will talk to you
Sounds
later.
good.
Thanks for joining. It was really good having like an extra like thought on here.
Yeah.
Talk to y'all.
All right, dude. Talk to you later.
Yep. See you guys.
Yeah.
All right. Sorry, I gotta pull this back up. Travis, are we able to hear you?
Yeah,
Okay, cool. It was muted there.
it was muted. It was muted for a second, and I was trying to let you guys know it was muted, and then so Devin just did that.
Gotcha. All right. I will start. All right. The parable of the wedding feast. And again, Jesus spoke to them in parables, saying, the kingdom of heaven may be compared to a king who gave a wedding feast for his son and sent his servants to call those who were invited to the wedding feast, but they would not come. Again, he sent other servants, saying, tell those who are invited, see, I have prepared my dinner, my oxen and my fat calves have been slaughtered, and everything is ready. Come to the wedding feast. But they paid no attention and went off, one to his farm, another to his business, while the rest seized his servants, treated them shamefully, and killed them. The king was angry, and he sent his troops and destroyed those murderers and burned their city. Then he said to his servants, the wedding feast is ready, but those invited were not worthy. Go therefore to the main roads and invite to the wedding feast as many as you can find. And those servants went out into the road and gathered all whom they found, both bad and good. So the wedding hall was filled with guests. But when the king came in to look at the guests, he saw there a man who had no wedding garment. And he said to him, friend, how did you get in here without a wedding garment? And he was speechless. Then the king said to the attendants, bind him hand and foot and cast him into the outer darkness. In that place, there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. For many are called, but few are chosen. Ooh, we're going to have to touch that part.
Yeah.
Yeah. Paying taxes to Caesar. Then the Pharisees went and plotted how to entangle him in his words. And they sent their disciples to him along with the Herodians, saying, teacher, we know that you are true and teach the way of God truthfully, and you do not care about anyone's opinion, for you are not swayed by appearances. Tell us then what you think. Is it lawful to pay taxes to Caesar or not? But Jesus, aware of their malice, said, why put me to the test, you hypocrites? Show me the coin for the tax. And they brought him a denarius. And Jesus said to them, whose likeness and inscription is this? They said, Caesar's. Then he said to them, therefore render to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and to God the things that are God's. The things that are God's. And when they heard it, they marveled, and they left him and went away.
Can you highlight 21 before we move on, so I remember that one when we come back to talk?
Mhm.
Thank you.
What the heck?
Travis, we got to get you a Bible, man. Where you can start highlighting some
Yeah.
of your own stuff.
I want to let me highlight it. Oh,
Pop up.
it's not signed in for some reason.
Okay, well, it's 21.
I'll highlight it.
I can
I'll highlight
remember it.
Let me just log in.
I got a
real quick.
different tab opened up, so I highlighted it. All right. You want me to wait while you get that done, Bryce?
Yeah, if you could just for a second.
We'll just clip this part out.
It's not a big deal.
But yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt the flow, but I didn't want to forget that line.
No, yeah, good. If you want to do that, like show it out there.
I'll find the easy to edit times to jump in with it. But yeah, I got you.
All right. Sadducees ask about the resurrection. The same day the Sadducees came to him who say that there is no resurrection, and they asked him a question, saying, Teacher, Moses said, if a man dies having no children, his brother must marry the widow and raise up offspring for his brother. Now there were 7 brothers among us. The first married and died, and having no offspring left his wife to his brother. So too the second and third, down to the 7th. After them all, the woman died. In the resurrection, therefore, of the 7, whose wife will she be? For they all had her. But Jesus answered them, You are wrong, because you know neither the scriptures nor the power of God. For in the resurrection, they neither marry nor are given in marriage, but are like angels in heaven. And as for the resurrection of the dead, have you not read what was said to you by God? I am the God of Abraham, and the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. He is not the God of the dead, but of the living. And when the crowd heard it, they were astonished at his teaching. The Great Commandment. But when the Pharisees heard that he had silenced the Sadducees, they gathered together, and one of them, a lawyer, asked him a question to test him. Teacher, which is the great commandment in the law? And he said to him, You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the great and first commandment. And a second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. On these 2 commandments depend all the law and the prophets. Whose son is the Christ? Now, while the Pharisees were gathered together, Jesus asked them a question, saying, What do you think about the Christ? Whose son is he? They said to him, The son of David. And he said to them, How is it then that David in the Spirit calls him Lord, saying, The Lord said to my Lord, Sit at my right hand until I put your enemies under your feet. If David then calls him Lord, how is he his son? And no one was able to answer him a word, nor from that day did anyone dare ask him any more questions.
Can we go right back to that last one? The structure of the mic drop kind of threw me off. Like, I don't think I understand.
He's
that
talking
part.
about the Trinity right there.
Because
About how Jesus is God.
Yeah, like 'cause I can tell what's happening in the sense that they're just like trying to test him and stuff, and he's just like, "Stop! I'm gonna stop you right there." I don't understand the David one though. Probably because I don't know well enough about it.
So that 44 right there, it said the Lord said to my Lord, sit at my right hand until I put enemies under your feet, is out of the book of 2 Kings, I believe, which is 2 Samuel, which is the book that David is written in. And that was written by David back in the Old Testament, way, way, way before Jesus was coming. So this was when David was in communion with God. And David said that the Lord said to my Lord. So it was kind of like this thing in the Old Testament that was like, what does he mean by that? So it says, if David calls him Lord, how is he his son? How can he be the son of David?
I still don't understand because he's the first
that
part.
like-
Like I understand what the Lord said to my Lord. Like he's saying that.
Right.
So
I don't understand
42,
that.
Yeah, we
I
got to
know
go
that
above that a
literally-
little bit.
Yeah. So 42, it says saying,
No.
what do you think about the Christ? Whose son is he? That was the question that the Pharisees were asking.
Yes, I don't understand how is it then that David in the spirit? I don't understand what.
So
That means.
okay, we'll go over that. So it said they said to him, the Pharisees or the Sadducees, the son of David. That was their response to Jesus. And then Jesus said back to them, how is it then that David in the spirit? So David was visiting heaven in this moment. He was speaking God. So that's when he says in the spirit is referring to David being in communion with God.
Okay.
So how is it then that David in the spirit calls him Lord? And then says what David said. The Lord said to my Lord, sit at my right hand. And then Jesus responds after that, says, if David calls him Lord, how is he his son? Because a
Right,
son
I-
would not be a Lord of a father. during
Yeah,
this time period.
that part I get. I don't understand the Lord said to my Lord part. Like I get what it means in the sense that I just don't understand how he's saying Lord twice.
Jesus to God,
Yep.
Okay, there we go.
the Trinity.
Gotcha. Yeah, this old like conversation throws me off sometimes, man.
Yeah. It's hard to
Yeah,
wrap
the
your
way
mind
stuff
around.
is worded is a little challenging sometimes. I definitely agree.
Because I feel like we'll read something and then it's just like I see. Do you have any idea what he just said? No.
Well, I think there was I don't remember if it was last week or the week before last. I'm like, what do you guys think of this? And then it was just like dead silent. And then you were like, what do you think of this? I'm like, well, I have an answer. I'm curious of what you guys want to say. And you're like, well, then just say it.
I don't know.
Yeah, we're clue. Yeah, we were clueless in that moment. Oh,
It's like, why do you think I'm asking, bro?
It was like the sass that came along with it was the funny part because it's just like, man, if you don't know, just say I don't know.
yeah.
Like, why don't you freaking tell me, man?
Don't play these games with me, James. Okay.
Hey, I gotta speak in parables too. All right.
Every time my managers are like, "What are you saying?" Though I'm just like, "The fig tree." What? And I clock out and go home.
Yeah. Quite literally killed it. Killed the shift.
But yeah, to get the discussion back on board, like it's it cracks me up because I still am getting the hang of like all the names, Pharisees, Sadducees, and everything. But Pharisees seem like public enemy number one. Like they just the biggest haters in the block, and they're always trying him. It's just like he's like that dude at the
Yeah.
bar that can do like something cool and just like, oh, big shot. Why don't you do a backflip right now, Mr. American Ninja Warrior? And he's just like, I'm gonna stop you right there. He's so done with it. Like,
Yeah.
it's
Mhm.
Yep.
and
He was so done with it that he sent himself down to earth to be like, yo, what are you doing?
Yeah, to literally roast them in person.
Yeah.
except the catch is the roast is like it's like a 12-layer roast. You know what I mean? Like he's roasting them
Oh, yeah.
with the words right now, and then it's just like you just wait like a couple thousand years when the world turns into fire.
Yeah. He's literally
And-
giving a
That just hit me.
6-course meal of roast.
And I like that because can you scroll up to the beginning of this where it says what was it? They heard this that he silenced the Sadducees right before the Pharisees gathered together for whose son is the Christ. He says, all right, like right before it,
Wait. Above whose son is okay.
yeah, the top of this one. Yeah, when the
Great commandment.
Pharisees heard he had silenced the Sadducees, they gathered together. Like all day, he's been getting like questioned and tried and everything. And it's one thing to like, I feel like ask and be curious, but like it's clear that these guys are doing it to try to get one up on him. And he slowly, like, his patience just wanes, even though he is the most patient person. And then I just love that when the Pharisees, the biggest haters of all, heard that he silenced the Sadducees, they were like, let me ask you this one question about the commandment. And then he asks, well, what about, and like what about the David thing? Because it's Jesus who asks them, like, let me ask you this, who do you think is the son of, or is this and that? And yeah, what do you think
Yeah,
about
who
the
is
Christ? Whose
Christ?
son is he? Yeah, it's like he's been getting all of this. And instead of being like petty, petulant, he's just dropping facts. And then now, while they were gathered together, Jesus asked them a question. Well, what do you think? Whose son is he? And like, with what that's supposed to say, like he just ended their career. And the way that I love that it says that nobody dared ask him anything else the rest of the day. Like,
mic drop moment right there.
Yeah.
like he tends to have a lot.
Yeah. Well, this right, like the chapter right before this too, it just goes, they asked Jesus a question and Jesus responded that he would answer them if they answered his question. And then they said, I don't know to his question. He's like, well, I guess I know I'm not going to answer your question then. You know, like
Savage.
full on just Jesus being a menace.
Yeah.
It makes me feel
Through the
better about my quippiness. Yeah.
There was some other stuff we wanted to cover too, right?
Oh yeah. Well, let's go back to the top and we'll work it back down.
Okay. Yeah, because we definitely got to talk about this wedding feast thing.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, because I got a little lost on a thought and I missed the very beginning of the parable. I got a little confused about who was saying what and this and that. So I thought that was kind of.
Let me summarize the parable to make it a little bit easier to understand. And that way we don't have to read all this through again because it's a pretty long parable. So there's a king.
And I'm listening, by the way. I'm just grabbing water.
Okay, yeah, sure. So there's a king who's having a big feast, a big wedding feast. And he invites a bunch of people to it. And he sends out like his servants to go like invite them. And then pretty much everybody that he invited either decided not to come or killed the servants that he sent to like call them to the wedding feast. And then he's like, okay, well, that clearly did not work out. So I'm going to invite a bunch of new people this time. So this is kind of like in reference, actually, I just not thought of this. So this is kind of wild thing to me. This is like essentially equating Israel to like just the people of Israel. Like, this is exactly what happened with them. And he goes, I'm going to go invite everybody now. And he goes, he gets his new servants that haven't been killed. And he says, go out to the streets and invite everybody, good and bad. Because I got this wedding feast prepared, like equating it to the kingdom of heaven. It's like, I'm having a party. I want people to be coming to my party, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So he goes out, invites everybody, both good and bad. And so a bunch of people show up this time. And then something interesting happens is actually like when someone gets there, says he was found without a wedding garment. And then he's like, He goes, how did you get here without a wedding garment? How did you get in? The guy's like, I don't know. Like, I don't know how I got here. He's like, yeah, you don't belong here, dude. I'm going to cast you into the outer darkness. In that place, there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. It's talking about someone who thinks that they're getting in, but then has no response to what they did in order to get in. Like they have no reason why they should be there. God invited them and they showed up with no robe.
Yeah, he didn't ask for a robe at the on the invitation. He just said go out and gather. He didn't give any requirements as to the only requirement was grab them and come. And then, you know, he said, friend, how did you get in here without a wedding garment, even though I invited you to grab everybody? And then I'm going to cast you out because you're not wearing what I didn't tell you to wear.
Yeah, but who goes to a feast and doesn't wear something nice? Or like who goes to a wedding and doesn't wear something nice?
Fair, but you don't go into the streets and the slums to invite all the homeless people inside to get food and then wonder why they didn't stop off at their lack of apartment to shower. Do you get what I'm saying? Like, I can see, obviously it wouldn't be written this way if there wasn't a purpose behind it.
So
right.
I
let's put it
can't
this way.
grasp.
If you're
Why?
going to hang out at a party with the king, are you going to go show up in flip-flops and board shorts?
Fair. You would probably want to make sure that, if like I'm in front of the king, you want to look presentable and everything like that. But that's not the guy's fault for showing up when literally what he was told. They said wedding. Did he say it was a king's wedding feast, or did he say, hey, there's a feast here, invite everybody? Like, I see where you're going with it. You want to make sure, like, I'm
It's not
assuming
me.
that when he says,
This is a Jesus parable.
sure. And when I say
this
you're
is
going
also
with
a
it, I mean,
parable, and we're getting caught up over the antics of it. Let's dive more into the explanation behind it, okay? Because it's not literally like talking about a wedding feast,
Right.
and people not dressing up appropriately, okay?
Right.
well, don't misconstrue what I'm saying as meaning that either, because it's like, well, when he's like, if it is a parable, it's the point of the invitation, right? So I would think that, how did you get in here without a wedding garment? And he was speechless. I would think that would translate to, if it's the kingdom of heaven and you entered with that and you're not wearing the wedding garment, I would think that would mean the stamp on your heart that you have accepted Christ, so to speak. And the fact that he was speechless, he went in for the wrong reasons. He didn't go for the celebration of a feast to share. He went in to gorge. And the speechless part, he didn't have the faith. Like, he couldn't say, I was invited, like, in the sense that, God is my savior, Jesus is my, however syntax would be appropriate for it. That's what I think it would mean, is that it's a metaphor for having faith and
right. So
showing up for the right reasons.
If he did say, I was invited, what do you think God would have said to him then? Or the king, sorry.
Then welcome, I would think. Like, you were
right?
invited.
Yeah.
Right.
I can't wrap around the fact that, why would you invite somebody just to cast them out because they didn't show up to a guideline you didn't give?
I think the guidelines here are pretty much implied. I think that's
Can you scroll up a little bit more? It's a little cut off right at the top of my screen.
Yeah, because like the guidelines are not outlined in this parable, but the parable is speaking about the kingdom of heaven, and it starts off the parable with the kingdom of heaven is compared to this. And when we're talking about heaven and going to heaven, it's pretty much implied of what you got to be able to do to go to heaven.
Right.
Love God with all your heart. Love your neighbor like you love yourself. Right. So it's kind of like this guy goes to heaven and then realizes, oh, I never loved God. I never loved my neighbor. And then God's like, dude, what are you doing here? And you're like, the guy's like, I don't know. It's like, I'm sorry, man. You got to leave. Like those guidelines are implied. Like that's
right.
When you go to a wedding, you don't show up to a wedding in board shorts. You just don't do that. You wear a suit or you wear a tux. And you don't have to state that when you go to a wedding.
I find it interesting because I think a thing that a lot of people struggle with when it comes to faith, and if this is going to be too deep of a conversation, then I'm willing to table it for now. But like the idea that
you always say that this is what this podcast is meant for.
Yeah,
sure. Yeah. Just want to let you guys know that we're getting into some territory here with this.
Yeah, let's. I think the main goal is let's try to like hit points and not like drag it out. You know what I mean? Because then then
I think this is
make progress.
I think this is really important, considering that this is a parable of comparing the kingdom of heaven and getting in, because it's the point of it. Of what the question I'm going to pose is, it sounds a lot like terms and conditions on unconditional love. And I think there's an interesting thing, like if we're all about forgiveness and saving, and it's an eternal love, and that's what it's really all about, getting into the kingdom of heaven and eternal paradise and everything. And I love you unconditionally, this and that. but there are terms and conditions to meet for getting in. And
But what
you'd
is
think
that
that
term and condition?
to love God and to love thy neighbor, and like you got to put God first, and that's what it is. Like that's
Mhm.
what I've been starting to understand myself, but I'm still an advocate for that point because I'm still trying to understand how. I think I'm in a safe enough spot that I do have the faith that I don't see myself having to worry about this issue myself. You know, after what I've been through, there's no shaking mine. But for my brothers and sisters out there, I at least think it's worth talking about. Like,
I definitely get
that's
your
like a
point.
problem people have with faith is
Y-
like, you know, how
Yeah.
can a God be all good and all loving, but also say you can't get in unless you love me? Like, it makes sense to us, but like, I think in a layman's terms and like explaining like the more intricacies of getting into heaven and everything without that wedding garment, like you'd think you should be allowed what no matter what you're wearing. Because I mean, look, he even says that the taxpayers or the tax collectors, the whores, and everybody will get into heaven before you for being more connected, this and that. And it's just like, don't you think that it's not fair to
Let let
invite
me
people in? Okay, sorry, I'm
let
getting a little ahead of myself.
let
Yeah.
me read a parable that you missed because you got on a little late. It was the
Sure.
chapter right before this. It's called the parable of the tenants. It's a kind of shorter one. So let me just read this real quick, and we'll hit a point on this because I hear what
Cool.
you're saying. I totally
Yeah.
understand. Here another parable. There was a master of a house who planted a vineyard and put a fence around it and dug a wine press in it and built a tower and leased it to tenants. And then he went into another country. When the season for fruit drew near, he sent his servants to the tenants. So now the owner of the land somewhere else sends his servants to go to the lessees to get his fruit. So the tenants took his servants and beat one, killed another, and stoned another. Not very good tenants, right?
Hmm.
Again, he sent other servants more than the first, and they did the same to them. Okay, so now they've killed 3 people already, and then I sent more servants, and they killed them too. They're
After
rejecting
already being granted the hospitality
They're
of
rejecting the
getting
people that
leased,
I'm
yeah.
sending them. Yeah. Finally,
Mhm.
he sent his son to them, saying, they will respect my son. But when the tenants saw the son, they said to themselves, this is the heir. Come, let us kill him and have his inheritance. And they took
Mm.
him and threw him out of the vineyard and killed him. When therefore the owner of the vineyard comes, what will he do to those tenants? And then the people that he was talking to said, he'll put those wretches to a miserable death, and he'll let out the vineyard to other tenants who will give him the fruits of his season. Is that a pretty reasonable response?
Absolutely.
Okay, so that's exactly what God is doing in this circumstance now. But he's saying, give to me what's mine. Just like the owner of the vineyard wanted his fruits, God's saying, go love me and go love everyone else. If you can't do that, then you're not really welcome here because you're not doing what I've sent. And I've sent you messengers over and over and over, and you've rejected them. And then I sent my son down to earth, and then you rejected him too.
And killed him.
And killed him. So the term and condition here, there definitely are terms and condition, but that term and condition is to love. That's it. Like,
Right. Because
Right. And the thing is what I want to add is it never says that there's no terms and conditions to the invitation, right?
correct.
We're just assuming that because it's not mentioned. So when you sorry, I was trying to recollect my thought here. Yeah, so basically when you're invited, there are going to be conditions to a wedding, right? If you're
Mhm.
invited to one. And it's not fair for people to come in randomly when they shouldn't be there.
Right. Like if they were given like a beer in a parking lot nearby the wedding by an attendee from it.
Hey, we're not going to talk about that.
Yeah.
Sure. That's neither here nor there, my friends. Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's I think the thing that I've come to understand more more practically in the last few months, especially since doing this Bible study, that I think it's like, yeah, of course they're like, that's the thing. The common folk all know if it's all loving, unconditional love, like you can be forgiven, you can be saved, no matter what, anybody can come in. I think that might have gotten misconstrued over the years as you don't have to do anything. And I think that the lesson in the term and condition is love, but it's not just, go around spreading one love. It's more to it than that. To love and to honor God is that key ingredient, because God is more than just a man in the clouds that you're praying to. God is an essence. That's what true omnipotence is that it's unfathomable, right? Like you even mentioned to me one time, James, like God is like some old language, like abbreviation for a long term that essentially means the undescribable force.
The tetragrammaton. Yeah.
Yeah, that really cool big word. And like it's the fact that like God separated himself into human form as Jesus, right? Because it's the same way that Jesus is God, yet he's also not, because he's the Son of God. It's like when
he's God and man.
Exactly. And so I think people, because a man in the clouds fixing everything, that's what like the common perception of God is, because we need to have that childlike understanding of the man in the toga in the heavens of the clouds, like looking down upon us. But it's not. It's in you. And I think when you learn to love God and be able to see it as God, that's where it's like literal like embodiment of love and light that lives within all of us. So doing so, it teaches you the selfless part of it, that it's not just about you. Like honoring God first isn't what people think it is, and love me or you go to hell. No, it's loving God means that you now have put all things earth, even though this is your body, your life, your decisions, you are making that decision to choose the essence of life over you and your selfish needs. And I think that's what the lesson that I didn't learn. And, because that was always the biggest conversation point we got into, you know what I mean, James? Like, because it's like, it's just, I feel like, I still think it's not fair. I don't think you can ask to invite people in and say everybody, and then be surprised, that doesn't mean that I don't understand,
Well, yeah. And
everyone has an invitation, but are you showing up properly? Like that's kind of the
right. Yeah. Everyone's invited.
Love. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the thing. Like, I understand that it's not fair, but what's not fair is God giving us everything that we have and us rejecting him or not glorifying him.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, or killing his son when all he wanted to do was try to save us.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of stuff that's not fair when you look at it in that light, but he's done everything for us, literally. I mean, he's given us life,
right?
Breath, food, shelter.
Yeah. And I don't even think that saying that kicking somebody out of the wedding feast because he's not wearing his garments in this case is unfair because of the parable that we just read.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because it's like God is clearly telling us what he wants. It's pretty like it's just go love me, love the people around you. Like that's pretty much it. And you can get into all the minutiae later on. Like there are like things. So it's like, what's the best way to love? That's definitely like up for debate. But if you're trying, God's going to honor that. And to say that that's not fair, that God will not have someone get into heaven because they neglected to love. I mean, is that fair or not? Like, because it seems pretty fair to me. Like, it really does.
So then what would you, like, just out of curiosity, like, what about like the people who, due to like I guess like a circumstance of maybe when and where they were born, right? And they don't necessarily get the chance to, I'm not trying to say don't get the chance to seek it out. Like, it's more so like, what if like they're born into a city, town, or whatever that the national faith isn't like Christianity, for example, or this and that, and they go through life, not knowing how we know it because we're born in like Western society. Like,
Yeah.
I'm just curious as to what you would like say to that,
That's a very common question, and it's very highly believed that those people will go to heaven because they didn't know any better.
Yeah, so I actually I'll try my best to explain it. I saw someone ask this question to Cliff Connectly, and what he basically explained was if you grew up, let's say you grew up in the woods, no society around you, nothing. It was just you and your family. You knew nothing about religion, nothing about God, anything like that. But what you did was you go outside. I guess you're already outside because you're in the wilderness.
You go out
at
of your
night.
nest.
Yeah.
Out of your hut. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. You go
With
out
the
at
wolves.
night and you look up at the sky and you see all the stars that are out there and you think, wow, this world is in a crazy, amazing place. There's got to be something out there that's bigger than me. That is essentially believing in God, is not focusing on yourself, not being a selfish individual and thinking the world revolves around you. Thinking of a higher being and something that is unfathomable to like try to grasp conceptually, right?
Right.
So even that would
Be
kind of,
enough.
I don't want to say get you a ticket, but it'd be enough to spark that and start.
On top of that, too, there's also like when God pulls the child out in front of him, he's saying to enter the kingdom, you be like a child. You know what I mean? And essentially, the people who have not heard the word of God in this case are like a child when it comes to spiritual concepts. They don't know. Therefore, they get this pass, essentially.
Yeah. I
It's
would
the
agree there, too.
rejection of God himself, whereas that is where it's
because that's what because 2 points. For one, Bryce, especially with like the out in nature thing, because that in a position like that family would be living incredibly harmoniously as God intended with nature. Like never taking more than they need. Giving back to the environment. Leaving the place better than they had it, which I think is sort of like that's the whole point of like the physical stuff. But and two, to James, like I think it boils down to what we talked about either last week or the week before. What makes it different is that it is when the choice is there. That when like you can't really have the free will to not believe if it's not your choice, if you never know about it in the first place. It's when you have it and you still choose to say no like that. That's where I think it counts. It's like like that whole free will thing, you know what I mean? Like, and I guess you could argue, well, why would you give me the choice to love you and not make the love you a requirement, but then make it okay if I can't, or not make it like, you know what I mean, what I'm trying to say. And like that's
making
what
a choice if I can't.
Yeah, just commanding
and
me
then
to
like
do something. I'm just a slave.
Because every time that we ever say God says love me, it sounds like, if you without a context, I mean, that sounds like a very selfish, like human thing. Like, love me, look what I did, give me the props for what you didn't ask me to do. And that's where I think what I've been learning lately is that to God, love me, that doesn't mean like, here I am, talk about me and worship me like in that superficial way. By worshiping God, you are choosing love, type of thing. It's like it's a little bit more complicated than just picking a person to idolize.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So to say sorry, go ahead, bro.
I was just gonna say, if you think about it, like think about if you were God, like if you created all of this stuff and you were able to do this, would you not want your creations to love you? You know what I mean? Like, would you not want them to worship you?
Sure, but I am also a human, and wanting people to love and worship me, I feel like, is a human selfish thing. I think whatever species God would be, I don't know what else to call it, but as omnipotence, you could argue that he should be above that. But that's where I think my point with it is trying to be, is that it's not that by asking to be loved and requiring to be loved that he's stooping to human level, it's because loving God is more complicated than just worshiping a person. It's not like a man that we're worshiping and loving. God is love, God is light, God is God. And we think it means like a human thing because we have the human lens. What
Right.
I've been learning is that it's bigger than that. So it makes sense for me. I just felt like it was a worthy point to bring up in conversation because I feel like that's what a lot of people get locked in on.
Yeah.
Here's another thing to think about, at least, just like food for thought, is that God does say, love me. Like, it is a commandment, right?
Mhm.
But he's giving you reasons to love him. So it's not like it's just like, love me or die. You know what I mean? It's like, hey, check out what's going on here. Look at how I handled it. Check out what's going on here. Look at how I handled it. Look at the final outcomes of these situations. In this moment, it seems pretty rough, but look at what happened. And then he's going on. So like, people also try and warp what God is, because humans oftentimes we think are our own gods, and not like in that literal sense of like, oh, I'm a god, I can go do whatever I want, but it kind of gets into that concept because humanity having the ability to have free will gets into that territory where you're thinking that you're above other people. So
it's what's kept us alive as a species and it advanced us this far.
Exactly.
Double-edged sword,
It is a double-edged sword, absolutely, because it's definitely a gift too, right? But God comes down in those moments to be like, yo, no, you're not representing what I want. And that's when his anger comes out. That's when Jesus goes into the temple and flips the table. It's because it's misconstruing what God is. So if you see God's wrath and God's anger, it's because it's not what he wants. And
usually his anger is justified.
It's always justified.
Yeah.
Even in like Sodom and Gomorrah, he's like, these people are not living in the ways that I want. They're living completely by their free will and against my commandments. And because of this, there's going to be a lot of repercussions for that. And instead of making you guys suffer the repercussions, I'm just going to go put it to an end now and let the ones who sin face that repercussion. You know what I mean? I want to save you from this later on wrath that is going to come from their sin, because sin is generational. It moves through time and space. We're still suffering consequences of World War II to this day, you know?
But yeah, like it's kind of like where so I had a lovely conversation with Hannah today. She's been going through some stuff with work and has, long story short, stayed true to her standing her ground on a situation that it required HR involvement, and she's been going to meetings and this and that. And thanks to her, as of today, she has single-handedly changed a decades-long method of operation on a very fraternitized institution. And she has made changes that are very powerful stuff. And so we catching up, I'm talking to her. I was literally in my driveway for like 45 minutes wrapping up the conversation. And we're talking about, she's kind of on the same path I am, in the sense that the way things are starting to move and like things are getting better. And I know that a lot of it has come from, it's not so much that by coming to Bible study, all of a sudden things are worked out, but putting the time to study and learn these things, it's gotten me to a point where I can see God's work in the sky before work. And it's just a mundane, normal day. But like, I get like so stoked, like it's a blue, clear sky, not a cloud. And it's just like game recognized game, man, like from one artist to another. And that little thing right there, that's the secret. See what happens when you love God? Like, that's what you do. And so now it's a normal day at work and I'm walking in like so stoked just because of the sky. And as we're just talking about all these things, man, like it's the timing of everything is too, it like just the last 2 months, it's almost felt like what's happened for us recently has made the last years of struggle clear. And now it's just like, now I'm starting to understand I'm having the hindsight that that's why God put me through that, for this right here and what is to come. And if we extend that, it was beautiful because we're all so in sync. If you extend that to like all the way back here, it's like that everything planned out and everything has worked according to plan. And the way that humanity has evolved and become so horrible and evil and capable of greatly terrible things. And we needed to have these things happen because we as a species advancing into our technology, surviving, we've gotten us to a point where we have indoor plumbing and all this luxury, and having that great evil that does come with it, I think is a disgustingly necessary part of the equation, because having that dichotomy of chaos and harmony in the nature that is humanity, that's what gives us the choices. That's what makes the choices to love God more powerful, more important. You know what I mean? And I think people get too caught up on that, wanting to be all alone, like wanting to be right about everything and wanting to be their own gods and everything, that you're missing the point of the humility to give before you get. Not to say you need to study the Bible every night like we're doing with Bible study to get it, but I had something and I lost it. I'm rambling at this point. I'm sorry.
Good.
But
good point to move on from.
Is anything like making sense here?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Cool. So thank you for taking the time to walk me through that. That was a really cool parable.
Yeah, no, it was a really cool parable, and I mean, you asked some really valid questions. I mean, it's not something that's easy to accept, that God's gonna reject people. It's a scary thing to think about, but it's the reality.
Because I think it's bigger than just rejecting people. You know what I mean? And that's why I wanted to ask it, because even though I've come to know and understand it for the most part in my heart, if we're supposed to be helping, right? That's, I think, definitely conversations worth having.
Right. I mean, ultimately, yes, we're trying to plant some seeds and be the messengers, but people can only help themselves if you really think about it. It has to be their decision to make.
100%.
Yeah. I said this the other day when we were talking about something where, with all this political talk and all these things that are happening that in society these days, and sort of like performative activism, in the sense that there is a noble pursuit to fighting for what's right. But they said Caesar's. Then he said to them, therefore render to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and to God the thing that are God's. I think the reason I wanted to highlight that is because it's like there's a fine line between fighting a noble cause, no matter how fruitless the end results are, and being just straight stupid and knowing and like fighting or like aiming at the wrong thing, and it's not going to cause anything because you want to be noble about it. Like knowing what battles to pick, being smart about it on a real note, like exactly like he said, therefore render to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and to God the things that are God's. He's not saying you shouldn't have to pay taxes because they're not of me. You are in Caesar's world. Look at this. He's on your coins. He is your currency.
Mm-hmm.
What am I going to do? Sweep in and flood the place and solve your problems for you? No, fight the battles. Like, don't, even though he's not saying whether or not he agrees with it, but if you were to just constantly be yelling about issues that are noble or not, but you're not really doing anything to really serve the fight, then it's no longer noble. It's stupid and more harmful than good. Just because you want that pat on the back and the praise for fighting what's right, but you're not really doing the fight because you're just wanting to be seen. Know your battlefield. Know your battles to pick. And that's why I wanted to highlight the Caesar one, because we were talking about this day and age being Christians when the guide was written, when society was not at this point. I just think that's a really interesting thing that he literally says that.
Yeah, I have a bit more of a on the nose response to this one myself, because I just got my W-2 back this week.
Oh yeah,
and I saw how much money I got
you
taken.
paid in taxes.
Yeah, And I got so mad just immediately. I was like pretty livid. Like, I can't believe this much money is getting taken away from me because it's my money. And I was like really
No.
getting into it. Like, they're stealing my money. And I was just like, ugh. I was like ready to tear something up. And then that verse played through my head. And I was just like, oh. And I looked down at like a dollar bill and it said United States of America on it. I'm like, it's not my money. It's not
Yep.
mine. Like, just
It-
like my mind and like my attitude, like almost immediately was like quelled. It was like insane. And it's true. It's like, it's not my money. And I was so upset for this like couple minutes. And then like literally that verse played. And then I was like, joy of the Lord just came over me.
Yep.
I'm like, why am I upset about this? It's not mine in the first place.
Hey man, at least you don't have to pay state tax.
That's true.
I
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, no, I totally agree. I mean, long time ago, I used to get really upset over it too. But reading this, because I've read this a while ago, obviously. I know it's easy to forget sometimes, but I love this verse just because it helps me so much when it comes to like money in general. It's like, yeah, we can stress about these things, but we are born into this society and we don't really have a choice but to, use this money, right? I mean, we if we're going to survive, we don't have a choice. But at the same time, don't stress yourself out so much over this where you're giving yourself like heart attacks because you're so stressed out.
Because
Or
money is still an earthly object.
exactly.
It's
Put your
necessary.
treasures in heaven, right? But yeah, it is necessary, unfortunately.
That's that sweet spot. Yes, it is an earthly treasure, but 2025, being born into the United States, we kind of have to covet an earthly treasure if we want it in order to survive. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like
Well,
we
it goes
do
back
need
to
that
that
money.
that verse that we read last week too, with the shekel getting caught in the mouse fish, like they were charging them a fee to do something, and Jesus was like, "Okay,
Oh
pay them the
yeah,
fee."
he was like, "Does the son pay tax or whatever?"
Yeah.
Yeah,
So it's like, go pay the fee. Like,
yeah,
what do you want? Like, that's it. Like, we're held to God's law, but we're also held under man's law as well. You know,
yeah, yeah. It was
we abide in
like,
that
do the
world.
sons of the do the sons of the king pay tax? And ultimately, it was no. But he's like, but as not to give offense to him, let's pay it anyway.
Yep.
So yeah, no, it is ridiculous. But I mean, I definitely see your point though, Travis, like with the whole like political side of things as well. Like let them have that. Like for me personally, and I've been battling with myself a bit about this, like as an American, should I not like be getting into politics and doing these things and maybe going to these like community meetings where I can make a difference and all this stuff? And I'm like, you know what? To be honest, every time that I get into politics, I get very upset. I
Me too.
get, I like mentally, I just start to get very agitated and it affects me. It affects my home life. It affects my everyday life. And I've chose not to get into it because you know what? At the end of the day, God's plan is still God's plan. What he has that he wants to happen will happen. And what he does not want to happen will not happen. It's
Amen.
all in God's plan. So why stress so much about it and get into arguments with people about all this political stuff when at the end
Right.
of the day, the only thing that matters is God's love.
And I think to add to that though, because there is a balance, because I feel like if left unchecked, that line of thought leads to apathy in your own home country. I think ironically enough, the movie Starship Troopers had a quote about the difference between a citizen and a civilian. And I pulled it up So I think it's like the same kind of thing, how a citizen accepts personal responsibility for the safety and the body politic, defending it with his life. A civilian does not, in the sense that as citizens, this is still our home. This is still our country. And I think there definitely should be, to just sit back and just not at least do your part. Sure, but that's what I meant by choosing your battles, knowing that there's only so much that screaming onto Twitter about boycotting Starbucks, for example, is going to do. And that if you're so hell-bent on boycotting Starbucks when there's all these real things happening, then you're no longer being noble and fighting the good fight. You're just being stupid and lazy in a sense, So if you're not going to really do anything about it, if you're not going to be out doing your part, sit down. I think, because at the end of the day, all that does matters is God, in that sense. And you're very right. But being in 2025 and living in this life, we still need to do our part but we need to know at what point, is holding on to this thing going to cause more pain than just cutting it off, And that's just back to discernment.
Well, yeah. And like knowing that about myself, like if I chose to go like get back into politics and stuff like that, I know that it would upset me so much. It wouldn't be effective for me to do that. You know what I mean? Like I'm not the right type of person to get into politics. If you are, power to you. If you can handle that kind of stuff, go for it. I'm not saying that you shouldn't, but I'm saying for me personally, that's what I've chosen to do with my life, because I know how I react to it. And it's not a good, like me and politics do not fit at all. You know what I mean?
Fit for most people, I would say.
Yeah.
That's the funny thing. We're all like on the same page a lot more than we think, thanks to powers that be. And that's where it's just like you said, at the end of the day, we know what matters. We know what really counts. And to those that don't, we can only pray and hope that they find their own light, and find their own path to it.
Yeah.
Well, let's keep moving on a little bit, because we got a little sidetrack there, but it was good. Not a good sidetrack.
Yeah.
These are my favorite sidetracks we've hit in
exactly.
Bible study, I think.
So we also have the Great Commandment. I'm not going to go into that because we talked about it in our last sidetrack, but this is the great and first commandment. But you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. This is the great and first commandment. And second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. On these two commandments depend all the law and the prophets.
Can I ask a question?
Oh, yeah.
About that?
No.
No. So, there are 10 commandments, but those are the most important too.
Right.
Is it?
Well, so it's summing it up.
Because by following those two commandments, you should inevitably end up following the rest of them, correct?
Right. Yeah. Because it says on those two commandments depend all the law and the prophets.
So that's like the foundation. But, I'm just wondering if all sin is equal, right? And you break one of the commandments, but you're not necessarily, what if you, thou shalt not steal? Isn't that one of them?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean,
and what if you're starving and you need an orange from that stand, but you're apologizing, you're saying
don't steal. Go ask somebody.
Fair. I was just curious.
I mean, yeah, we could think of reasons why, but at the end of the day, we're trying to come up with excuses. You know what I mean? Generally, when you read through the laws, they're common sense, good things to do.
Right.
You know what I mean? At least what I think most people would think it would be common sense, right?
I agree.
Yeah, because then how would the people who own the orange stand feel?
Yeah.
I had 7 oranges stolen from me today. That's $7.
Come on, man. I got kids to feed. What? They don't like falafel?
Yeah.
It's Batman
but again, Jesus did come to fulfill the old law. So we are no longer held by that standard. Doesn't mean that it's not good to follow.
Right. It's not an excuse to just ignore it and,
Right.
defy it, so to speak. But I guess the question was coming from a place of, as long as that's the foundation, and you should be good. Like, that's the most important one. Things can get a little messy here and there, but that's the one you got to come back home to.
Yep. Yeah, because it gets into the minutia of like, well, what's loving someone properly here in this situation,
Mm-hmm. How many things awful are done in the name of love, but they're misguided love,
Right. Yeah, because like if someone was stealing an orange, yeah, they're doing wrong, and that's an act of desperation. But if they get caught, if the person who owns the orange stand is a loving person, they would say, you know what, I understand. Here, take 3 more oranges and go feed your family too. You know what I mean? And in that case, like that's a good example of Jesus in this situation.
Yeah, and loving your neighbor, right?
Right. That's loving your neighbor.
That happened to my father when he was closer to my age. He was a little lost in a sense of direction because he had opportunities taken from him, and he ended up in California for a while and became relatively homeless. And there was a gas station that he would rob on a regular basis to get, it'd be like bars of soap, toothbrushes, and stuff like that. Never like anything like food wise, but like he would swipe toiletries and whatnot from this gas station. And one day the guy caught him, and the owner of the gas station, and he sat him down and said, look, I've been taking note of what you stole and what you've been stealing. Here's $500, buy a plane ticket, go back home. And he gave him like a little care package of stuff. And then dad said that, that saved his life. And he never forgot that man. I forgot the guy's name, but he did tell it to me. And he said that when he did get back home and got everything all established and back on his feet, he sent that man $500 back. Like, he tracked him down and he sent him like a little baggie with a toothbrush and a bar of soap in it. And it was so cool to me to hear like the act of kindness that the man did, like the initiative he took to notice that and to give him that. And like, look what happened. If that didn't happen, my father couldn't have ever had me. And then I wouldn't have gotten to meet you boys. Right. And be on this Bible study with us.
Yeah, it's
ripple effect.
The way God works, man.
Yeah. So is it about being fair, or is it about loving?
That's the thing. You don't always have to be nice or fair. Love, like, it's like, would you rather spare someone's feelings or their life? Like, save their life or save them from being upset or offended? Like, that's not very nice. They're crying now. Yeah, but they're not going to go do this horrible thing that's going to get them killed or something like that,
Right.
Mm-hmm. I think that selfishness is where it gets misconstrued. Like, love means just validation. Tell me I'm this and that, and I can do no wrong.
No, absolutely not. Yeah, I agree with you there. It definitely gets misconstrued that way. Like, yeah, loving someone is sparing their feelings. No, loving someone is being honest with them and telling them what they need, not what they want to hear.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, me and Bailey had a conversation about that the other day.
Yeah.
Because she was, she was telling me how like she's been in this weird funk and all that, and and I was like, well, like, have you prayed about it? She's like, no. I was like, well, you need to ask God. Like, you need to pray about it and try to seek answers that way. And she was mad at me in the moment, but later realized, like, or I think I actually told her this. I was like, listen, I love you, so I'm going to tell you the things that you need to hear, not the things that you want to hear. You know what I mean? And she really took that to heart. Like, she was like, wow, like, that's so true.
Yeah. Like, if I didn't love you, I'd let you do what you do.
Yeah.
Like, I had a moment where, back when I used to go out and about a lot, and there was a friend that broke up with this guy. She and I were very good friends before she started dating said guy, and they were not a very good, healthy relationship. And due to a unfortunate misunderstanding, even though this guy and I were cool for a long time, first night we ever met, he drunkenly wanted to fight me, threw me up against the wall outside because he thought I was trying to make a move on his girl. Calmed it down and everything, and we were cool for, next couple times. About a year goes by. This good friend of mine starts dating him. She and I stop hanging out out of respect for boundaries of, relationship. You don't want to be going out about until 2 a.m. in the morning drinking with a girl without her boyfriend,
Mm-hmm.
That's just, I feel like that's just kind of wrong.
Yeah.
And finally, we all get to a point where her, this and that, and everyone's on good terms. She breaks up with him, and it's not a very good break. She and I hang out properly for the first time since. Now, we all knew mutual people, so he would come around, and he, of course, followed us around, and he already had a bad feeling about me. And seeing us hanging out, even though we were with a group of people, he came up to me 3 times trying to fight me at a bar on the beach. Ironically enough, the beach. Remember that because it's nighttime. I think it was Graham's. James, you went there at the end of your birthday thing.
Yeah.
And
yeah, a few years back.
Or Sandbar or something like that. Yeah. And point is, there is the actual beach right outside in the back, and that's important for what's about to go down. And so he would like throw his hands on the table and tell me, "If you're a man, come outside. I just want to talk." And I'm like, "Dude, you're like 6 inches taller than me, and you've got 40 pounds. I'm not going outside with you. I'm not stupid." And security came, separated us. I moved to one side. He was put to another. He comes up again, and he's so angry. We're outside on the sand, or like right next to the sand. And he's just like, "I swear, I just want to talk." And he's like shaking with anger and being like, "I just want, like, I swear to God, man, 5 feet over here. If you're a man, come out and talk to me." And so I don't know what it was. Maybe it was just I was sick of like dealing with all of this. But he moved away onto the beach and I just walked forward, right? And you know me, I'm not much of a fighter, but I looked him in the eye and I told him, I'm like, "Look, man, this is like what it's at. The last couple times you've interacted with me, you've done this. You were talking to me about wanting to be a man. I'm not going to fight you. Clearly there's something going on. So if you want to be a real man, you can talk about your feelings." And so I stepped up to him and I said, "You want to be a man? Talk. What's this really about, dude?" And this man, like, just, again, super drunk, so he's a little volatile, but he just like, we ended up sitting crisscross applesauce right there in the sand. And he was like, "Yeah, my dad and my mom cheated on me and everything. And it's like ever since then," or like, he just tells me this whole story as to why he's got a fucked up view of relationships. And I just told him, saying like, there comes to a point where you can't be defined by what happens to you. Your parents, that wasn't you. That was what your parents did. How long, like, you're 28 years old, bro. How long are you going to be hiding behind that one? And we just had a really good talk. The next 5 times we saw each other after that, over the course of the next 5 months, picked me up, hugged me, and gave me a kiss on the cheek. Like, and it's just, you like saying that, like, that just reminded me of that story, because that was like one of the first times that I've ever like bowed up, and like met the energy back, but like it went so well, like, because I wasn't trying to fight this guy. He would have pummeled me into that sand, but guess sometimes,
yeah, I think
a
you
little
did
bit
the
of,
perfect thing there. Like a
Yeah,
lot of
I think a
people
little
could have
bit of
gotten
love.
upset and been like, "Yeah, I'm a man," and got out there and started fighting each other, but that you literally did exactly what Jesus teaches us to do, not throw
Yeah,
hands.
because I've
about
been
Turn the other cheek. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've always been so insecure about like my size, in the sense that like I'm happy with who I am. That's the way God made me, and if I want to get bigger, all I got to do is just start working out, but there is a level of, a lot of like guys think that they can dog you whenever they have that much weight on you and stuff, and there's a level of insecurity. But thing is, I've never been in a fight, but I'm really good at de-escalating them, like,
Yeah.
I think
That's the better
you
way
can
to
say,
be.
Yeah,
you can
100%.
say whatever you want about my family, my mom, this and that. You're never gonna like bait me into making, because I'm thinking like, now that we're older, let's say you do get into a fight, and it's like stupid stuff that guys would normally get into a fight over, shake hands when it's done and be fine. But if you're like drunk, fighting out at a bar, someone gets a lucky hit or even trips, hits their head the wrong way, falling down on the asphalt, bada bing, bada boom. You didn't even do anything wrong. You met and held your ground, and now you're getting charged for manslaughter.
Yeah.
You know, we're too old to be, that's like, it's too stupid of a thing. So yeah, I may have my insecurities and wish that I could give somebody a look and they'll they'll shy away, but you know, that's why I'm a gift of gabber, you know.
Mhm.
That's why that's
Yeah.
my gift, and I think that it's a cool thing to think about, you know, like you can't destroy hate with harder
More
hate.
hate.
Yeah,
Yeah.
more hate.
Yeah.
Yeah. Satan
Yeah.
can't
You need
cast
to-
out Satan.
Yep.
You know, so just wanted to share that little anecdote if we're on the note of giving what they need out of love. It's not always nice.
Yep.
Because you want to be a man? What's on your mind, bro? Be a man and talk about your feelings to me, bro. Open up for me, dude. I don't know.
I mean, if the world was more like that, you know, the world would be a lot better place. Way, way better.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I
I
think
think I'm
that's
gonna call it here though,
I'm about
bros.
to say that's a great place to call it. Yep.
Yeah.
So, hey, sorry for being late, but thank you as always for having me, gentlemen.
Yeah,
Of course,
next
bro.
I
time,
really liked
next
this
time you
conversation.
can't
this
be
time
late,
around.
or else we'll go over there and we'll beat you up. We're having to step outside,
Yeah.
James.
and then
A
you can give me
Jedi.
a nice loving talking to.
Come here.
Bring
Anytime
it in.
somebody want to fight, I'm just like, come here,
Yeah.
come on. Besides,
Bring it in.
James, a wizard is never late, nor is he early. He arrives precisely when he means to. All right, I love you, boys.
All right.
Sleep tight.
God bless
God bless you,
everybody.
bro.
Soon.
Yeah. God bless.
Smash that like button.
No. All right. All right. So,
All right.
how are we supposed to end these videos?
Pretty sure we're supposed to say like and subscribe.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. But like I don't want to do something like cliche, you know, where like it's you know, like oh, smash that like button. Like we can't be doing that.
Yeah, no, but when you say it, you got to actually say it like smash that like button. You know, you can't.
It just sounds cheesy though, because like people always say it and they're always doing I'll smash that like button.
Yeah, but it's not. You're saying it wrong though. It's smash that like button. It's
I am saying it just like you're saying it, Bryce. Smash that like button.
no. You got to use your chest more. You gotta say smash
that like button.
No, that's no.
Because I sound
no.
exactly like you.
No, you
It's
don't.
like, thank you guys for liking and subscribing to our YouTube channel. If you were interested, please tune back in next week. We are dropping new videos on Mondays and Thursdays. And God bless y'all.
Yeah. Also, don't forget to smash that like button.
Any of that. Gosh, dang it, man.
God bless. God bless y'all.